What's up, fam? How is everybody doing? Today is either Tuesday or Wednesday because I'm going to use the same little pre-recorded clip for both days to read you the UN 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights that is going along with the conversations you've been having with Ms. Sequoia and the Socratic Seminar that we're going to have at the end of the week here. So our objective for today, Tuesday, and Wednesday, tomorrow, whichever this is, if you're watching, it's going to be the same. It is students will evaluate how our society measures up to the 1948 UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That's our objective. That is what we're going to be doing. So we're going to look at a document that's 72 years old and compare how our society is doing on these particular things. We're doing this because, obviously, our area, our country, our world, there's a lot of unrest. There's a lot of things that are going on. It's becoming more and more apparent that there are people that are not being treated the way they should. But we want to look specifically at our country and our community because our community got rocked this summer. And I know it impacted a lot of people. So that's what we're going to do today and tomorrow, which will lead us to our Socratic Seminar on Thursday. So, and for the Socratic, those of you that are going to be on campus that day, we'll do it with Mr. Wongard. If you're at home, you're going to do it with me. I don't know exactly what those details are going to look like. We might have to do it in multiple sessions because that would be a lot of people to have one Socratic Seminar online. But we'll figure it out. We will figure it out. Figure it out, figure it out. I find myself dancing a lot in my basement all of a sudden. It's Thursday of our first week. So things have been great. So here we go. What I want to do is I want to share my screen. I want to share this particular tab. Here we go. All right, awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in so you can read this a little bit more as I go. 150, perfect. All right. So the United Nations is an organization that was created shortly after World War II as a group, and there are 140 some countries in it now, but originally it was around 50. A group of countries that came together to ensure, one, that World War never happened again, and two, that human rights and people from all countries were being treated the way they should be. So they started in 1945. This document came out 3 years later in 1948. So we are looking at a document that's 70 years old. And we're going to try to evaluate how our society, our country is doing in regards to this document. So I'm going to read the preamble to you, which explains what the purpose of this document is. Now, with it, there are 29 articles. To start the year, we're only going to start with 1, 3, 5, and 7. But throughout the year, we're going to come back to a few of them just as we talk about different things. You know, there are different topics we'll face this year that will require us to come back to it. So these are just what we're going to do. But here is the preamble. That's the beginning, the introduction. Whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. Whereas disregard and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts. Barbarous is just very brutal, sickening, very physically not good. Like physical torture, things like that would be considered barbarous, which have outraged the conscience of mankind, and the advent of a world in which human beings shall enjoy freedom of speech and belief and freedom from fear and want has been proclaimed as the highest aspiration of the common people. Whereas it is essential, if man is not to be compelled to have recourse meaning a way to complain, appeal, air your grievances, have things made right if people do wrong to you. As a last resort to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, that human rights should be protected by the rule of law, whereas it is essential to promote the development of friendly relations between nations. So the second part is saying, if basic human rights are not upheld in each and every country for each and every person, then tyranny and oppression will start and rebellions will follow. All right. Whereas the peoples of the United Nations have in the Charter affirmed their faith in the fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, and in the equal rights of men and women, and have determined to promote social progress and better standards of life in larger freedom. This part, to me, stands out incredibly. Whereas the peoples of the United Nations have in the Charter reaffirmed their faith in the fundamental human rights. Fundamental human rights. Human. This is something that I think is sorely missing in our society right now, is we don't look at a human being. We look at groups of people. When you look at groups of people, it's much easier to just blanket statement that they're a certain way or they're a certain group. But when you look at a human being, you look at their face, you listen to their story, you can't say the kind of things to them that people just blanket statement about groups of people. In the dignity and worth of the human person, the dignity and worth, those words stand out to me. Nothing is more important than for people to have dignity and worth. Dignity, respect, people honor them. They feel good about who they are as a person, and they have worth. They can contribute. They can be a part of society, and in equal rights of men and women. And we know now that we've expanded that to all types of different genders. So that part's huge to me. That's why I bolded almost the entire thing. Whereas member states have pledged themselves to achieve, in cooperation with the United States nations, the promotion of universal respect for and observance of human rights and fundamental freedoms. Whereas a common understanding of these rights and freedoms is of the greatest importance for the full realization of this pledge. Now, therefore, the General Assembly proclaims this Universal Declaration of Human Rights as a common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations, to the end that every individual and every organ of society, keeping this declaration constant in mind, shall strive by teaching and educating. Teaching and educating, teaching and educating, teaching and educating. They're talking about this 72 years ago, that teaching and educating is important to promote respect for these rights and freedoms, and by progressive measures. Teaching and educating to promote respect for these rights. We need to be teaching these things to each other, not just as teachers of students, but as people. We got to teach it to our people. We got to pass it down that these rights are important, is what this is saying. Respect for rights and freedoms by progressive measures, national and international, to secure their universal and effective recognition and observance, both among the peoples of member states themselves and among the peoples of territories under their jurisdiction. Whew. That got me fired up, man. I got jazzed for that. This is such an important statement. This is such an important statement. It's such an important thing to read and to say. That 72 years ago, people were saying we need to do these things. And it's our job right now to take a look at whether we're actually doing them. So that's what we're going to do here. That's what we're going to do here. Okay, so we've read the preamble to the 1948 UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights with the intention, the objective, to evaluate how our society measures up to that document. So we're taking a document 72 years old, and we are seeing how we right now, our society, our culture, us as people, as Americans, as Minnesotans, as people who live in the Twin Cities, how are we measuring up? How are we doing? What are we doing good? What are we doing bad? Okay? This isn't an indictment of people or meant to be something where we're going to say gotcha to political groups or anything like that. This is strictly evaluating how our society is doing. We're going to look at things objectively, meaning we're going to look at facts. I talked about this a little bit in the syllabus last week, that we are going to look at current and historical events objectively with facts and analysis. Okay, so that's what we're doing. So before we have our Socratic Seminar on George Floyd and the situation that surrounded that and everything that happened, we want to take a look at these things set out by the UN as things that every human being should have. So let's share screen again, and I'm going to go over what the assignment is going to be for the next 2 days. It's going to be almost identical, but you're just looking at 4 different pieces. So let's take a look here. All right. So if it is Tuesday, you are going over Article 1 and Article 3, and you're going to answer the same 3 questions for each of these articles. Same 3 questions for each article. All right, so Article 1, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Endowed. What does that word mean? Endowed means given. Endowed means everyone has it. It's something that is given to them. In the Declaration of Independence, it says we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Endowed. An endowment is something that is given to make the world better. All right. Again, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Reason and conscience. Reason and conscience. Those are keywords right there. I'm going to give you a little hint. So, number 1, what words in Article 1 stand out to you? What makes each of them important? So let's just say you thought reason was important. You would write reason in there. And you would say reason is important because it's something we can use to make good choices. That's what I'm looking for. Number 2, what is the intention of this article? What the intention is the spirit of it. What are they trying to say with Article 1? So there's this thing in the military called commander's intent. And what commander's intent is, when a military order is given, it is the soldiers beneath that military leader's job to really get the intent of what the officer is trying to say. It's sort of like finding intent is when a teacher has a set of rules, and rather than students understanding this is what the rules are meant to do, like the rules are there so you respect everyone in the classroom and everyone can learn. If you're not following not following the intent of rules, but rather the letter of the law, is people who are always trying to find the loophole, and people who say, well, the rule didn't say I couldn't do this, or it did say I could do this. The intent of something is, what is its overarching meaning? So Article 1, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. What does that mean? Tell me in your own words. Okay? Question 2. Number 3. Right now, in the year 2020, how do you think our country is doing on Article 1? That's an evaluative question. How are we doing on it? And that's your opinion. There isn't a right or wrong there. So I want your opinion. So What words stand out to you and why are they important? What is the meaning? What is the deeper meaning of that article? And how are we doing on it? Article 1. Scrolling down a little bit. I'll zoom in because I forgot that I could zoom in on this. All right, let's go to 150. Article 3. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. Sounds a lot like Jefferson. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. So an important part here is maybe to think, why did they change it from happiness to security of person? Because this is coming almost 200 years after Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. Think about that. So everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the security of person. What stands out to you as important in there? And in this, there are only like a dozen words, so you don't have to have 4 important words. I just gave you spaces for them. What are the important words right there? Second, what is the intention of this article? What the intention is the spirit of? What are they trying to say? Sum up what this is trying to say. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the security of person. Security of person. And number 3, right now, in the year 2020, how do you think we're doing on Article 3? And how you think we're doing? Why don't you give a few examples? Explain why. Explain why you think that. Okay, I didn't write that in there, but please explain why. This is the 8th grade. We're going to explain things. That's why we're here. All right, so Article 1 and Article 3. Got it. So then, all right, so you're finishing up. This is the end of Tuesday's lesson. Whether you're online with me, whether you're with Mr. Wongar, whatever you're doing, great job today. So you're going to finish up these questions for Article 1 and Article 3. Submit them via Google Classroom. I'm going to have it set so that everybody gets their own copy, so you can write your answers right in there, and when you turn it in, it'll come right to me. So I appreciate the work you've done. You're doing a great job. It's great to be working with you and Mr. Wongard and everybody else, and I'm so pumped to be a part of this. So if I don't talk to you later on today, have a great day. Can't wait for tomorrow.